To call the March 6, 2023 meeting of the Union County Board of Commissioners to order. And if Commissioner David Williams would introduce our invocation speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tonight I have the pleasure of introducing the elder Dr. Edwin Elam from Elizabeth Missionary Baptist Church, and I invite you, sir, to do the invocation.
Mr. Chairman, Madam Chairman, Vice Chairman, Commissioners, Ms. West, Clerk of the Board, Interim County Manager, Deputy County Manager, legal team, staff, and above all, the citizens of Union County. I bring you greetings from the historic Elizabeth Missionary Baptist Church, 503 Maurice Street, where Bishop Oscar Gardine has been the pastor for more than 40 years. And our church has been here in Union County for more than 140 years. Let us bow our heads. Our most gracious Heavenly Father, thou art God. We thank you for this time when North meets South, East and West in Union County. Here, where the just and the unjust all convene for justice on the county's ordinances and statutes, just one block from statues of a just us historical period in Union County gone by. God, thank you for a time like this and a time to come where smart change is imminent and where down-home country values must remain the same. And they can and they will through education and coming together of relationships and friendships long overdue. God, we want to say to all people, thank you for this lofty chamber where the people's business should always supersede all agendas, and that in this small time slot for the invocation, I decree here this day, let love abide forever. And let your grace and mercy heal bodies, minds, spirits, beginning with this March winds of 2023. As I close, God, in front of you and on social media, I want to say thank you to the men and women who serve here as elected officials, past, present, and one day in the future, from the maintenance staff to the public works staff, to those who collect our taxes and pay our bills, and every person in between, and up the chain of command to the Union County Management Suite. Let them all help shoulder the weight until solutions for all people come the same, or until we can all wait no more. And finally, government must partner with all its citizens equally, we know, God, through the least to the greatest. But we must never forget that government is up on his shoulders for now and forevermore, world without end, for every human, woman, and child. Amen, amen, and amen.
Amen. Thank you, Edwin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, next we have informal comments, and we had some sign up in person, some sign up online. We'll start with the online. First is Lisa Laney. If you would come up and let us know where you are from, and you're speaking on keeping daughter at a certain school. Lisa. Lisa's not here. Okay. Next we have Kaylee Marshfield.
Just Callie.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Good evening. My name is Callie Marshfield, and I'm a resident of Monroe. I am coming here tonight to talk about medical freedom. So I have worked in this community as a healthcare professional for 12 years. About 2 years ago, my husband and I received the COVID vaccine. He is a soldier in the Army, and I'm a healthcare provider at the hospital. So even though we were, so we saw that the mandates were coming, and even though we were unsure of the safety of the vaccine, we decided to get it as we have 3 small children and we're not prepared to lose our jobs. However, we soon regretted making this decision. Initially, after the second shot, my husband spiked a fever and felt very ill. This feeling lasted for about a week, and his glands were swollen for about 3. We thought this was odd, but we didn't pay much attention to it until a few months later when his hands started bothering him while we were moving out of our house. He was unable to lift the boxes without gloves because his hands were cracking and his knuckles were sore. Shortly after this, he went to his first weekend of warrant officer candidate school. During his PT test on the first day, he was struggling to complete push-ups, something that he has never struggled with. In fact, less than a year earlier, he was running 3 to 5 miles daily and lifting weights 5 days a week. At this point, we knew something was wrong, but we couldn't figure out what it was. It wasn't until he saw a dermatologist for a rash on his face that we found out he had an autoimmune disease called dermatomyositis, a very rare autoimmune disease that affects your skin, muscles, and can sometimes affect your lungs. This disease is so rare that if you had a football stadium full of people, only one person would have this diagnosis. In fact, in the last 12 years of my medical career, I've only treated one other person with this disease. And yet, in the same year that my husband was diagnosed, there was an increase of myositis diseases, and this was worldwide. Since his diagnosis, my husband has experienced muscle weakness, severe joint pain, and significant shortness of breath. With activity, he was put on oxygen and has had several pulmonary procedures. My very active husband struggles to complete simple tasks as he used to enjoy. I come before you tonight not to gander sympathy, but to talk about the struggle that we have had post-vaccine. Maybe if he had medical freedom to decide, our lives would look a little different. And now we have to worry about our children with these recommended vaccines. Forcing the people to take a drug that was not fully tested and nobody knew the side effects is the definition of government overreach. We need to stand up and stop this because I dread that day that they may choose something, what they would choose next.
Ms. Marshfield, your time's up, but
Thank
are you almost finished?
I'm
or-
done. I'm
Oh,
done. That was
okay.
it.
Thank
Thank you.
Next, we have Kathy Powers.
Good evening. My name is Kathy Powers, and I'm a resident of Waxhaw. My family and I just celebrated the 2-year anniversary of our moving from New York to North Carolina. Our reason for moving was very simple. My son wanted to go back to school, and he was not permitted to attend any school in the state of New York due to the repeal of his religious exemption for vaccination. And this was before COVID-19 wreaked havoc on our lives. So the topic of medical freedom is one that I am very passionate about. And if there is one silver lining to the last 3 years, it is that more and more people are opening their eyes and their mouths for medical freedom. What we also saw was how freedom over our bodies was attacked by politicians, employers, colleges, and universities. These people and institutions mandated experimental products while holding livelihoods and education over the heads of millions of people. And for what? I think we all know what their reasoning was garbage. And they never, ever acknowledged the risks associated with said products. It's safe and effective, safe and effective, safe and effective. That's all we heard. That's all we ever hear in conjunction with the word vaccine. Guess what? The mandated products were not and are not vaccines. They don't prevent transmission, and they don't prevent infection. Could you imagine what the reaction would be if every child who received the MMR vaccine then went on to become infected with measles, mumps, or rubella? Parents would go nuts. the MMR vaccine would immediately be pulled from the market and a huge investigation would take place. Why this is not happening with the COVID-19 vaccine is beyond me. HB 98 helps to protect bodily autonomy, my body, my choice. It allows people to do their own research on their own timeline and make their own decisions about the COVID-19 injections without the fear of losing their jobs, being denied education, and most importantly, having their religious view and beliefs being called into question. Because as we also learned during the past 3 years, religious exemptions were being denied without even being read. Blanket denials were rampant throughout our country. Religious beliefs were being questioned and civil rights were being trampled on. Discrimination was allowed and accepted in restaurants, sporting event venues, concert venues, and other public places, all under the guise of public health. As far as I am concerned, it was all under the guise of a lot of BS. I support HB 98, and I support the Union County Board of County Commissioners approving a resolution to support HB 98. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Richard Daunt.
Good evening. Richard Daunt, resident of Waxhaw. Tonight I'm here to ask that this board express support for NC House Bill 98, the Medical Freedom Act, co-sponsored by our local representatives David Willis and Mark Brody. Bills like this have become a necessity because of the pandemic of insane BS that medical bureaucrats have put us through in recent years. Driven by a campaign of lies and media terrorism, no restriction was too onerous for unthinking politicians and health experts to impose on us. Lockdowns, masks, school closures, experimental vaccines made mandatory, medical ethics went completely out the window. The last time we sunk this low was during World War II, the medical horrors of which inspired the creation of the Nuremberg Code, which stated that medical interventions should never be coerced. Informed consent. Thanks to present-day profit-driven public health propaganda, the vaccine injured are shunned and viewed with suspicion, as if the COVID vaccines are humanity's first perfect medicine. Here in Union County, we know these shots are far from perfect simply by comparing 2020 deaths to 2021 deaths. There were far more deaths in 2021, the year of the shot. Is that supposed to be a success? Instead of allowing each individual to make their own risk assessment, we had a one-size-fits-all approach to this shot. And consequently, young people who could not possibly benefit from it have been forcibly injured. House Bill 98 prohibits coercion and discrimination related to the COVID vaccines and is a good first step towards restoring medical ethics. So I hope that this board will support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Stephanie Dixon.
Hello, my name is Stephanie Dixon. I live in Indian Trail, and I am speaking out for medical freedom. You see, right now, I look like I am a nervous wreck, but in actuality, this is my everyday life. I stutter. I trip and fall. I shake all over. I have twitches that I cannot control. I have pain that I cannot even describe. It is often that I feel like I'm being electrocuted in my spine and that my brain is going to swell out of my skull. But I have nothing wrong. I'm told that it is not possible that my very first and only COVID vaccine shot could do this, that they've never heard of anything like this before. And I was even told that, well, at least now we know, and maybe we'll learn something from you. I get no treatment. I'm ignored. I face doubt every day. I can no longer drive. I can no longer enjoy my children. I have even been told while Someone watched my blood pressure skyrocket and my heart rate jump more than 60 points for no reason. That is because I'm overweight and probably nervous, sitting in the doctor's office. I jump on the trampoline. I have been overweight since I was born. It's just me. It is how God made me. But it's also affected my brain. I went from making medicine and running a compounding lab for probably some of your grandchildren or children, heart medications. I have watched the medications that I made raise children to become adults for 16 years, and then I went to Atrium Health to make a difference. And I was treated like garbage. I no longer have a job. I can no longer do third grade math. Can you imagine going from making medications to heal heart patients and sick men and women, even pets, to no longer being able to help your child do her homework because I can't make sense, but nothing's wrong. It has come to a point, something's very wrong, but no one will help me. I need to take care of my family, my husband, who had to have...
Ms. Dixon, your time is up.
I apologize.
Continue.
Continue. I am wrapping up.
Continue.
I need to help my family. I need to work, but I cannot. And we need help, please. Just someone. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we have Brandy Smith.
Good evening. My name is Brandy Smith, and I reside in Marvin, North Carolina. I'm speaking to you tonight on behalf of Dr. Kristen Strange, pediatrician and resident of Union County of 25 plus years, and on behalf of North Carolina Physicians for Freedom, co-sponsors of HB 98. As medical professionals and pediatrician, I'm in agreement with the resolution to support NC House Bill 98, which prohibits state agencies, local governments, and political subdivisions of the state, as well as public schools, state, and local health departments, and their officials from discriminating against persons based on their refusal to provide proof of COVID-19 vaccination or submit to COVID-19 vaccination. I'm also in support of the sections in the bill that state governing bodies of public schools shall not adopt any policies regarding to use of face coverings, nor shall they quarantine healthy students. Putting any politics aside once and for all regarding these nonpartisan medical issues, it is now time for us all to learn from our mistakes in this particular pandemic, especially after more information and valid studies have become available, so that we never repeat these failed and at times detrimental policies to the future. Fact, face coverings and masking of children and the general public did not work to stop the spread of the virus, causing more harm than good, especially to children, and left us more vulnerable to other infectious disease through contaminated mask surfaces so close to our nose and mouth. Fact, isolation and social distancing did not work to stop the spread of the virus and caused untold harms to us both individually and as a society, especially psychologically, physically, and mentally, resulting in seemingly irreparable family and societal divisions. Facts. The still experimental COVID-19 vaccine failed. It did not stop the spread of the virus, it was not effective, and it is causing significant side effects, both short-term and yet to be determined long-term, especially for those children, teens, and young adults who had almost zero chance of severe COVID-19 disease even from the start of the pandemic. This was not a good strategy for vaccination nor prevention of disease. Given all the information we know now, it's time for this vaccine to be stopped and taken off the market immediately. The vast majority of us have now had COVID-19 infection, and it turns out natural immunity does work, and some studies suggest it is superior to current vaccines. As important as it is for physicians and other medical professionals to be able to practice medical freedom, to make the above statements and recommendations to their patients based on their individual healthcare needs without the fear of retribution from employers, state, and federal health licensing agency, it is of even more importance that each and every patient, Every human being has absolute medical freedom. It is inconceivable to me that a bill such as HB 98 should even have to be crafted by our legislators, but the pandemic of COVID-19 showed us just how vulnerable we are to have many of our freedoms, especially medical freedoms, compromised. We must promote and allow medical freedom for us all. My highest regards to you in your role serving the citizens of Union County, North Carolina.
And Brandy, out of curiosity, is that your new baby back there?
Yes.
Would you like to introduce her to Union County?
I feel like she's already a
Well,
part
have
of
her
the
come
team,
up and
so-
introduce her, put her on camera. And by the way, we'll each need a turn holding her, right, board? Just pass her down.
And the pollen has been through a mess today. So this is Ashton Greer. She's 8 weeks old as of Friday.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Taking her home.
Okay, that was the list of speakers. Did anybody come in that has something to say or would like to say anything before we close the public hearing? Before we close the informal comments? Okay, informal comments are closed. Next, we have the public hearing for refunding of services, Series 2013 limited obligation bonds. Beverly?
Good evening, Chairman and Commissioners. Thank you for this opportunity to present this public hearing. At your last meeting, I presented to you an opportunity that we have to refund our Series 2013 limited obligation bonds. After these are refunded, they would become our Series 2023 limited obligation bonds. The recommendation is that we would refund the full amount of the outstanding principal. The final maturity for these bonds would stay the same, maturing December the 1st, 2031. Trustee would remain the same as Truist Bank. Our estimated all-in true interest cost is 2.57%, which would generate an estimated net present value savings of around $1.4 million. This is a required public hearing as if we would issue any other bonds in the market. And later on this evening, you'll have some items to approve as well for this refunding.
Okay. Any questions for Beverly? All right. So we had no one sign up for the public hearing. Anybody want to speak for or against? All right. Thank you, Beverly. Now we'll close the public hearing. And next, we have staff recognition. The Quarter One Service Award recognition, and Jennifer,
I'm
Julie?
gonna sub in for Jennifer. Good evening, Commissioners. One of the special events that we have the privilege of coordinating for our employees is the Service Award Recognition Program. This program recognizes service to Union County, starting at 5 years of service and moving up through 30 years of service for county employees. And we have quarterly sessions that we hold for these events. The last one was held in February for our first quarter for about 27 employees. Unfortunately, not all employees can attend these events, so they're captured through video and pictures that we place on our intranet site, on social media. And this allows for not only our other county employees to be a part of these events, but allow the family and friends of these recipients to see, hear all the good things that are said about these employees, to learn about their dedication to Union County and to serving the citizens. So we do have a short video we want to share with you tonight about those service award recipients that we have for the first quarter, and I hope you enjoy the video. Thank you.
Welcome everybody to our Q1 Service Award ceremony. Today we are celebrating employees who are celebrating 5 years, 10 years, and 15 years and 20 years with the county from January, February to March. So congratulations to all of you. This is an exciting time. I always enjoy these ceremonies. I've told somebody earlier today, you're either going to laugh or you're going to cry today, or you're going to do both, right?
thank you for everything you've done. You're a godsend to this community.
So going from nonprofit work to county government work at social services, the most rewarding part has been the number of people and lives that I feel like I've been able to impact. The clients and customers that we serve through social services, these are people who need support. They need someone who can help lift them up and work with them through situations that they find themselves in. We have children and adults who are vulnerable that we try to protect. That is some life-changing work. We have families who need food, who need medical assistance, and we're able to assist in providing that.
Congratulations.
Thanks, sir.
Recognizing employees and acknowledging their loyalty to the organization is an excellent way to make sure that you maintain those employees as well. Everyone likes recognition. Everyone likes to be appreciated and likes the gratitude for work well done, and that's important for any organization.
Thank you. So working here for Union County for the last 10 years has been great. Working for Union County Water for 10 years it's been phenomenal. I've loved every minute of it. As I mentioned, I've been in the industry for 20 years now, and of all the places that I've ever worked, Union County has definitely been the best, most supportive of their employees. It's a great career. I'm just very thankful to be here at Union County Water.
I appreciate all that you do for me and for the department and for the servant heart that you bring to Union County.
Congratulations. Absolutely.
Matt, congratulations on 20 years.
So what's most rewarding about my job is the family, the camaraderie of everybody here within the organization, everybody helping each other out, the values that we hold for each other. We all look out for each other, all as one big family.
I don't want to just focus on the outside because I think it's important as a leader to also think about the staff. And so another part of that reward that I believe that I've seen is being able to get to know, take care of, and support my own staff and build a culture of kindness and accountability within social services.
I want to say thank you for everyone. First off, I enjoy hearing all the stories, all the commentary. It's obvious that there's a lot of respect, there's a lot of camaraderie that you have, and that's important. We spend so much time at work. This is our work family, and I appreciate hearing those stories and everything that you do. From the management team, we are just so proud to have you be part of this organization. We know you have lots of opportunities to work other places, and the fact that you choose to work here, stay here, continue to be long-running employees is what makes this place a great place to work. And so on behalf of myself and the management team, I just want to say thank you, and I hope you have a great rest of the day.
All right, let's give everybody a round of applause for that. Okay, next we have the consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Unless there's an objection, I would like to add an item to the agenda during the business portion.
Okay,
I'm not sure if this is the appropriate time.
We'll do
or
that
not.
after the consent. You can do that after. Yeah, we'll do the consent and then add items.
Okay.
So any changes to the consent agenda? Anyone want to make a motion to accept this consent agenda?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. All right, now entertain any additions to the agenda.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Yeah, unless there's an objection, I'd like to add an item to the agenda during the business portion regarding the potential adoption of a resolution in support of North Carolina House Bill 98, the Medical Freedom Act.
Okay. Any discussion on that? All those in favor of adding that item to the agenda?
Aye.
None opposed?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to also add an item to the agenda, and I would like for this to go first, a motion to appoint of a county manager as the first item on the business portion of tonight's agenda.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
One. Okay. And I would also like to add an item, a motion to add an item to the, in the business agenda, or to the end of the business agenda regarding the consolidation of the planning board and the board of adjustments. Any discussion on that? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
One. Okay, so we have first the county manager issue. Would you like to go with that, Vice Chairman Merrill?
Yes, after receiving approximately 30 applications from across the country for the position of county manager, I would like to make the motion to appoint Brian Matthews to serve as the Union County Manager effective immediately in accordance with NCGS 153A-81 and 153A-82. And item 2, authorize the legal counsel to negotiate an employment contract with Mr. Matthews for consideration and approval by the board at a future meeting.
All right, motion's been made. Any discussion on the motion or questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
One. Okay, next, let's do HB 98, the resolution for HB 98. Commissioner Brian Helms.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion to adopt the resolution in support of North Carolina House Bill 98, the Medical Freedom Act.
Okay. And any discussion on that motion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if I may. I'm pleased to see that our state representatives, Mark Brody and David Willis, have sponsored North Carolina House Bill 98. It's called the Medical Freedom Act. And as we entertain this resolution tonight, other counties in our region are voting on similar resolutions supporting this bill. As many of you know, this is a topic that resonates with me. It resonates with me because, like so many others, it's affected my family. Much like those that spoke tonight, I've stood at that podium as well, and many others in this county at multiple county boards. For over 2 years, I've spoken against these unconstitutional mandates on masks, vaccinations, and also medical liberty. Tonight's going to be no different. This bill prohibits medical discrimination for those that refuse the COVID-19 vaccination. To be clear, this is not discrimination based on race or gender or even religious beliefs, but discrimination based on a refusal to receive an experimental drug. Yet in the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, citizens of our county, our state, and our country faced unprecedented medical discrimination and the loss of many personal liberties. Some of them, like our medical providers that we heard from tonight, and many others are still facing this today. Many of our citizens have had to make difficult choices. For some, the choice was to receive a COVID-19 vaccination or lose their livelihood, their ability to provide for their families. For others, it could have been a decision to place a mask on a child so they could simply go to school. As we heard from some of the speakers tonight, these choices came with unforeseen consequences. For some, they not only lost their liberty, their freedoms, but also their health and their way of life. I've said this before and I'll say it again, that healthcare is not a one-size-fits-all, and to mandate experimental vaccinations or to continue or even gain employment or go to school or even simply go to the grocery store is nothing more than medical extortion. It's been said that if you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it. In all honesty, our state representatives shouldn't have to introduce a bill to protect our liberty to make our own personal choices regarding our health care for ourselves and for our children. But if we've learned anything over the last 3 years, we should have learned how fast our liberty and our freedoms can be taken away. I've read the entire text of HB 98, all 3 pages. Is it perfect? The answer is no, it's not perfect. No bill ever is. Just this weekend, I spoke to one of the co-sponsors of this bill, Representative Mark Brody, about some small changes that I felt would widen the scope of it. I like to look at this kind of like playing baseball. In baseball, you can't hit a home run every single time that you step up to the plate. Sometimes you got to get some runners on base. This bill is a step. It's a step in protecting the citizens of Union County and the rest of our state against unconstitutional mandates and government overreach. This bill will not undo the harm that's already been caused to some men, women, and children. It won't magically restore the health of some of the speakers who addressed us tonight. It won't give back time at school for children that were unnecessarily quarantined. It will, however, ensure that our freedoms are better protected in the future. Before I was elected to office, I made a promise to stand against unconstitutional mandates and to do everything I can to protect the individual freedoms of the citizens of this county. Tonight, I stand against these discriminatory policies regarding COVID-19 that have not only affected us but also our children. And I also stand in support of this bill, and I ask my fellow commissioners to stand with me and use what little authority we have to help protect our residents and support this resolution. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Any other comments? I'd like to make a comment myself on it, and I will be supportive of the resolution. When I remember when COVID first started and people were out of school, and I was listening to NPR, which is not something I make a habit of, but sometimes I like to watch something to make me a little angry. And I listened to a child that was not looking through a political lens, but this was a child who was well educated and had studied the virus, the COVID-19 virus. And that child said, this looks like it was created to do the most damage in a human body as possible. Now, it wasn't 30 minutes earlier in that same broadcast that a person probably in their 20s or 30s said, oh, no, it's definitely not created. But yet we've done more to punish our citizens, and the government has done more to punish citizens, and the employers in this county have done more to punish citizens than ever was done to punish the people who now we have found out, and the media is admitting to, created this virus in a lab. So I'm absolutely in support of this, and we need to learn that our children's future is important, that our jobs and our economy is important. And I'm proud to say that Union County Board of Commissioners did not vote to shut Union County down. It was forced upon us at a higher level. So with that, I will definitely be supporting the motion, and thanks to all the speakers tonight for their stories of what they have had to go through. Any other comments? All those in favor of the resolution say aye.
Aye.
None opposed. Okay. We'll put the consolidation of the Planning Board and Board of Adjustments on the end. So let's get into business next. 23-110 Series 2023 Limited Obligation Bonds again, Beverly.
Good afternoon again, Chairman, Commissioners, and new County Manager Brian Matthews. As before, we held the required public hearing to refund our 23 limited obligation bonds, and I won't go back through this all again, but I wanted to remind you of the requirements and the steps to actually go forward with this refunding. Tonight, you will be asked to appoint members to the Union County Public Facilities Corporation, as well as adopt the initial preliminaries finding resolution to move forward with the refunding. The next steps following that is that the Union County Public Facilities Corporation will need to meet to consider approval of the resolution for refunding. That is the sole source of what that corporation's job duties are, is to enter into a resolution with our trustee to be able to actually issue limited obligation bonds with the way the general statutes work in North Carolina. Following that, at your April the 3rd meeting, we would ask that the board adopt a final resolution for the refunding. On April the 4th, we will be asking the Local Government Commission to request the approval for refunding to move forward with the public sale in the market. On April the 17th, we will price the bonds in the market and close on April the 27th, with all outstanding bonds redeemed and refunded on June the 1st. And I'll be glad to answer any questions you have regarding this refunding before we move forward to the action items tonight.
Any question or you need a motion tonight, right?
Yes.
Any questions or anybody want to make a motion?
The members that we are requesting to add to the Union County Public Facilities Corporations are recommended by Manager Matthews. These individuals are staff, but they do not play a direct role in our financings, so this will create separations of duties amongst those involved in the financing and refundings.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'll make a motion that we appoint members to the UC Public Facilities Corporation as follows: Brian Matthews, County Manager; Amy Hollingsworth, Assistant Finance Director; Benjamin Isley, County Senior Staff Attorney; and adopt preliminary findings resolution authorizing the negotiation of an installment financing contract and providing for certain other related matters thereto.
Any comments, any questions? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
None opposed.
Thank you all.
Next, we have budget amendment, additional tuberculosis program funding. Dennis Joyner.
Mr. Chairman, I'm actually going to take this one. This was deferred from the last board meeting for action, and I sent additional information to the board the week following the last board meeting. I haven't received any further questions. I'm happy to answer any if there are any. This is simply asking for receive and appropriate $19,600 in additional funds from the state for the Ukrainian TB work that the Public Health Department has completed.
Okay. Any comments, questions, or?
Mr. Chairman, I'll say, first of all, Michelle, thank you. I appreciate the additional information that you sent. As you recall, I requested this to be removed from the consent agenda at our last meeting because I wanted to get some additional information. And I believe that you were able to supply that, and I do appreciate it.
Absolutely.
If there's no other discussion, I'm prepared to make a motion that we recognize, receive, and appropriate additional funds for the Uniting for Ukraine program.
Any questions or discussion on the motion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Thank you
None
very much.
opposed. Okay, next, we have 23-077, Union County Adopted Property Acquisition Policy Presentation. Brian Matthews.
Yes, sir. Mr. John Shutak will be doing that. Thank you.
Chairman Rushing, Vice Chair Merrill, Commissioners, Mr. Manager. Appreciate your time this evening. Good news is I'm not asking you to make any decisions. So this is informational only, and really just wanted to take some time and walk through the current property acquisition policy with you. With that said, I'm going to give you some background information, talk about the goals of the policy, what the adopted policy is. There's a couple of components to that. Give you a kind of a status overview of a few projects that we have, and then just cover where the board weighs in on decisions for property acquisition. So that said, there's really two types of property acquisition. One, fee simple. Number two is easements. So fee simple, pretty straightforward. It's a wholly controlled interest by Union County. So we're buying a piece of property, we own it, we control it. And then there's easements. And these come in a couple of different forms. They can either be permanent, which implies a permanent or perpetual use, or they can be temporary. And a temporary easement is generally time-bound, limited to some activity, typically construction. But an easement is owned by the property owner. There's just rights that are conveyed to Union County. So understanding the types of property that we typically look at, easements are fee simple, we need to understand when we acquire these during the project process. For pipeline projects where we would typically get easements, this is going to start fairly early on, right at about the 30% design milestone. And it's 30% because that's when we understand where that pipeline is going to go. We've done enough preliminary work to be able to locate that and begin the property acquisition process. Now, for a pipeline project like that, we do need to complete the property acquisition process prior to awarding a construction contract. We're not going to put a contract out to bid where a contractor would not have access to that property to do the work that we're asking him to do. Now, for fee simple interests, it's a little bit different. We're going to acquire those up front because we're acquiring them for a fixed facility. So it's going to be a treatment plant, it's going to be a building, a water tower, et cetera. And we need to know what that property looks like before we do the design. And just a couple other notes here. Any project may require property acquisition. So we may need easements, we may need fee simple acquisitions for any project that Union County Water may undertake. And project timelines, as you know, the capital program, these span years. So there can be multiple approvals from the board that are required over time. So you may be asking, well, why do we get easements? Why can't we just put this stuff all in DOT's right away? Well, I want to cover that here because there's a couple of different things you need to understand about NCDOT right away. And if you break it into kind of three buckets, it's pretty straightforward. So one, there's controlled access rights of way, and this is like the Monroe bypass. Then there's dedicated right-of-way, where there's right-of-way that is specifically dedicated to NCDOT. And then there are maintenance right-of-ways where there are no records of dedication. So within a controlled access, DOT is generally not going to allow you to install a pipeline parallel to that roadway. That's just not what they're going to do. If you're in a dedicated right-of-way, they still prefer that you be outside the right-of-way in a dedicated easement, but if you are going to be in the right-of-way, it requires an encroachment agreement, and you do need to comply with their utility accommodation manual provisions. Now, if it's a maintenance-only right-of-way, you're still going to have to get an easement because there's no record that DOT actually has that as right-of-way. It's not dedicated. So they're going to make you go back to that property owner and get that easement, even if you're within the maintenance limits. And then just stepping back from a practical standpoint, you may not actually be able to construct the infrastructure in a right-of-way. So if you think of sewer interceptor lines, those aren't constructed next to roadways, those run along creeks. So DOT right-of-way wouldn't apply. If you're talking about larger diameter water mains, such as for the Yadkin project, you physically couldn't put that in the right-of-way. We have pipes that are up to 54 inches in diameter. If you recall, we had some pipe over here for a while at one of our previous presentations, and it's pretty big stuff. So physically building it in that right-of-way just isn't possible. So what are we trying to achieve? Our adopted acquisition policy first was adopted in October of 2018, so quite some time ago, and it was specific to the Yadkin Regional Water Supply Project. About 5 months later, we adopted the same policy to apply to all projects. There's a staff component and there's a legal component. I think I skipped over a slide. I knew I did. Goals. Sorry about that. So the goals of the policy are: one, we treat everybody fairly, objectively, equally. We provide reasonable compensation through a uniform process, and the policy for acquisition applies not only to Union County projects, but to developer-driven projects as well. If you recall, at our last meeting, there was a question as to whether or not a developer is responsible for costs during the condemnation process, and the answer to that was yes, they absolutely are, just like we would be if Union County was proceeding with it. So, onto the policy. Like I said, adopted in October of 18 for the Yadkin project, then adopted for all projects in March of 2019. There's a staff component, a legal component, and the adopted policy has been provided to you just for reference. But for the staff component, first of all, it requires staff to, number one, identify the project needs for property, whether that's fee simple or easement interests. Requires us to use an acquisition agent, so there's an objective third party used. And it also requires multiple notifications to property owners, as well as a public meeting event to provide information on the project to the public and affected property owners. The valuation is based on a fair market value, so it's done through a property appraisal, regardless of whether it's a fee simple acquisition or an easement interest. And that offer is presented either in person to a property owner, and that's preferred, obviously. We'd rather have a face-to-face meeting. But in the event that we can't do that, we would mail that offer to them. And regardless of how the offer is presented, we then follow up with a phone call and reach out to that property owner again to discuss any questions they may have and try and get to the resolution on acquiring that easement. And it's important to note that neither staff nor the acquisition agent are authorized to negotiate the compensation amount. It's based on a fair market value. It is what it is. And we, as staff and our acquisition agent, do not negotiate that amount. If there's a request for additional compensation, it is automatically referred to legal counsel for negotiation and settlement. And that's where the legal component comes in. If the property owner doesn't accept the offer, for whatever reason, it can be referred to our legal counsel, as I said, for negotiation and settlement. Ultimately, that may lead to a request to the Board of County Commissioners to authorize condemnation. This is a last resort. We want to work with a property owner. We want to get to a negotiated settlement before we ever ask for the use of eminent domain or condemnation authority. And negotiations are always preferred. So even when condemnation authority is granted, we continue to negotiate with property owners to reach a fair settlement. So with all that said, as you can see, we have a number of projects here. They're in various stages of acquisition. The Yadkin Regional Water Supply Project, condemnation has been authorized on that, and we're working towards resolution of the last few properties on that. The West Fork Interceptor, again, condemnation was authorized for that, and we're working through the last few acquisitions for that as well. The Crooked Creek Interceptor, that project's on hold, so we're not doing anything with it at this time. We have our 853 transmission main. Property acquisition for that is complete, and the project's under construction. And then we've got the 24-inch transmission main, and this is the line that comes from the new water treatment plant south to the Wingate area. And that is in process. In our next slide, I'll go through some particulars on that one as an example. We also have the FY21 short line program underway, and we're working through appraisals, and we'll be making offers to property owners here in the near future. The future phase of the transmission main there, that project is currently on hold, so we're not presently moving forward with any of the property acquisition steps. But just as an example, the 24-inch line coming out of the new water treatment plant going south towards Wingate, project's about 7.5 miles long, involves 73 total easements. You can see our professional services cost there, and that's for the acquisition agent, as well as for the engineering services to develop the easement exhibits or the maps that go with the easement instrument. That's just over $400,000, and the estimated cost to acquire those easements is right around $300,000. You can see of the 73 there, we've acquired 22 to date. We have 37, or roughly half of them are in process, and 14 have been referred to, or will be referred to legal counsel for negotiation and settlement. So based on the first round of things, we've acquired roughly 1/3 of the easements outright, simply by presenting the fair market offer to the property owner. Oops. So some decision points. Obviously, this process spans years, as I said, and it may involve multiple points of contact with this board for approvals of various things, and that really starts with contracting. So we use an acquisition agent, and as such, that requires a professional services contract. This is typically rolled in with the design services contracts. So we'll have the design engineer on board, and they will roll in the use of an acquisition agent, as well as the use of an appraiser, and that's all bundled together under one contract. We can also do it separately. A lot of times it's simpler for staff to manage one consultant rather than multiple consultants. However, you'll see those contracts regardless of how it's approached, whether it's one or multiple. We would come to you with requests for authority to negotiate. If we're working on a fee simple acquisition, those commonly come before the board when there's a counter proposal from the property owner. Our legal staff would bring that to you for requests, to request negotiation limits or direction on how to proceed. And last, we would come to you with a request for condemnation, again, as I said, as a last resort. And you would also see ultimately the construction contract. Now that construction contract is going to come at the very end, so we've already gotten through the entire property acquisition process. As you can see, there's multiple points of contact where you would be seeing these things. So with all that said, I think I went through that in record time. A lot of information, but I'd be happy to take any questions that you may have.
Anybody have questions? I've got a question. Do you want me to step?
Go right ahead.
Couple questions. You know, I was told that we could not put water line down Highway 601. Is that accurate or not accurate? This has been told to me in the past.
Highway 601 is a controlled access right-of-way for NCDOT, so yes, that is an accurate statement.
And clarify, we mean in their right-of-way. We can obviously obtain easements outside the right-of-way. It's inside the right-of-way that they do not allow us to put it, because that's controlled access.
So we can still put it down 601, we just have to do it outside the state right-of-way?
Correct.
That is correct.
Okay.
Apologies, I wasn't clear on that.
The other question is, when it's a county project, like the Yadkin project, we send out this information with Union County letterhead, Union County contacts. When it's a private acquisition, for example, a development is being built, do we negotiate with the homeowners and the developers? Or how do we do that? So many years ago, we had a situation where we were doing all the negotiating on behalf of the developer. But I don't ever remember us going back to the developer and saying, hey, you're on the hook for a lot of money. How does that work? Do you understand what I'm saying? If you got a parcel away from a trunk line or a main gravity line of sewer or a water line going through a certain area, if a developer's paying to get it from point A to point B, and it's solely on the developer, who negotiates that and how do we negotiate that?
So the developer, as I said, the developer is required to follow the same acquisition policy as Union County. So they have the public meeting, they have the property appraised, they present the offer to the homeowner. The distinction there is that where staff would refer any offer that is declined to our legal staff for negotiation and settlement, it's on the developer to negotiate in good faith, and they need to demonstrate that they have done so to us before coming forward and requesting that the board use or grant condemnation authority for that easement interest.
And many years ago, I remember, the big issue was that some cities were taking land away from people to give to development. They were, condemning one parcel. This is more in the construction, not easements for water and sewer lines. This was more like taking a property. That's not what we're doing. We're not taking houses. You're not going through a house and tearing the house down so a new development can be built.
No, sir.
Right.
We do not do that.
Right. Thank you. All right. Brian, did you have?
I did. So one of the reasons that we brought this to the board is it's important that in the future with us doing projects that the board understands that first we want to be transparent, and second, that these projects often take a long time from start to finish. And when it comes to the matter of condemnation, when we come to you and request that authority, we've spent a lot of time, resources, and funding already to get to that point. So what we want the board to understand is if we bring a project to you, that you understand that there's a very good chance for a lot of these easements, you will have to provide condemnation. It's nearly impossible to do a pipeline project and have every single property owner agree. We'd love for that to happen. That's not common. So the board just has to understand that if we bring you a project and you support the project, it is likely that we will have some condemnations we'll have to deal with. If the board doesn't support the project, it's good for us to know that up front. That way we don't waste time and money going after property that in the end we're not going to use because we're not going to finish the project. So that's part of the reason why we wanted to bring this to you is you have a lot of touch points along the way for making decisions, and as you should. But it's important for us to know, do you even want to move forward with a project understanding that you may have to use those powers at some point in time? And we will certainly bring those to you, express the project, you'll understand what its benefits are, and then you can decide, do you want to move forward with the project? So that's the reason why we put this for you.
And I've never been a fan of condemnation. I don't like
Certainly.
it. Nobody should like it. There is a process, though, that it's just not, we're taking your land. There's a legal process that you can go to court, especially if you feel like you're not getting just compensation, and you can challenge that at courts and have a jury hear that, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
As I did mention previously, you know, our preference is for a negotiated settlement.
Correct.
So while condemnation authority may be granted, and I'll give you just a brief overview here, but for example, the Yadkin project, there's a lot of easements involved with that. 321 total property interests. There's 5 fee simple and 316 easements. Now, as we went through the first wave presenting offers to property owners, we acquired about 1/3 of those, just with the property owner accepting the offer. About 2/3 of those got referred to attorneys. So roughly 100 settled, 200 outstanding. Fast forward in time, only 53 of those were actually filed in court for condemnation proceedings. Of those 53, we've settled 38. So there's 15 remaining after 5 years of the project. So out of 321 interests, we have 15 that are left. There's likely maybe 2 or 3 of those that are going to wind up going to trial. So of all of that, you're looking at 3 out of 321 that may wind up in front of a jury. So when I say that we are very interested in negotiating a settlement, that is what we do.
Might be interesting to the board. So with Stanley County, a large portion of our line goes through Stanley County. Whose condemnation authority was used to condemn those properties?
That is under the town of Norwood. That's part of our interlocal agreement with Norwood.
Could Union County have done that?
No, sir.
So whose authority would it be to go through a town in Union County?
Still Union County.
So we don't have to ask our towns if we can condemn land inside their jurisdictions?
No, sir.
Just outside of Union County?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Any other information?
Nope, that was it. I wanted
All
to share
right,
that last bit
fantastic.
with you. Thank you.
Okay, next, item 23-114, Union County Water Capital Projects discussion. Brian Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, members of the board. As John said, he was not asking for any decisions. I will be asking you for decisions because we do need to get some direction from the board. So I just want to bring this up. There we go. So as we talked at our last meeting, we explained sort of how we stand as far as our conditions with our financial, with the utility. How can we move forward with projects that we have in the hopper, so to speak, and those are some that are in construction, those are some that are in design, and some that are in future, whether they're expansion, whether they're renewal and replacement. We need to have some understanding and direction from the board of how we move forward with these projects and what your pleasure is. So I came back to the board. I'm here to kind of explain to you what your options are and how we can potentially fund and pay for projects that you may be considering. So again, this is a follow-up from our February 20th meeting, and we're going to give you a rate model to show you how you can potentially meet some CIP projects or capital improvement plan projects. All right, so for board considerations, one of them is develop a capital improvement plan that includes construction, design, and replacement renewal projects. I talked about that previously, so that's a consideration. That we will halt all other capital projects, including expansion projects, unless you define which expansion projects you want to move forward with. We'll fund the 23 and 24 R&R projects through changes in our cash reserve policy. That's our depreciation reserve policy. You'll actually have to take some action in the future to amend that policy, but that would be one of the considerations. And we'll use a mix of some of our unassigned ARPA dollars as well as a potential rate increase for the 12-mile wastewater treatment plant expansion. Those are all things for you to consider. So let me go through some of the other items here. So what we did is we took the board's direction to look at, well, if you wanted to do the 12 Mile Creek expansion project, what would that do to your rate model? What would that do to your finances? And so we asked Stantec, which is the company that does our rate analysis, to look at, okay, what would we take for the funds to do the 12 Mile Creek expansion? We also said, well, we might as well show the board what is the impact if you wish to add the Crooked Creek interceptor, because I think it's important for you to see those options. And then also what happens if you funded the short line water program. If you recall, that was one of the programs that we would have to exclude. There was no funding available for the 22 and 23 short line program. So if you wish to include that or continue with that, we'd have to find a way to fund that. So those were all baked into options for you to be able to have some consideration. We also will have to develop a system development fee study based on the CIP that you adopt. So that will have to move forward. And then we'll also have to have, as the board directed, a new GO bond policy for sewer expansion projects. We are working on that, and we'll bring that back to you, I believe, at the March 20th meeting. But the board did direct us to come up with a policy for using general obligation bonds for expansion projects. So let's talk about the scenarios. We have basically 3 scenarios. There's a 1A and 1B, but these are the scenarios. So first, the components were 1, and this actually goes through all 3 scenarios. So your funding sources are cash that we have on hand, a $20 million depreciation reserve, so we would take money out of our depreciation reserve. That's a one-time expense. Once we use the money, it's gone, but we could take that out. We would not, repeat, we would not take money out of our 365-day reserve. We believe that should remain in whole. We would use $8 million of system development fees, which were collected in the 12-mile basin. We'd use $16 million of our unassigned ARPA dollars. And then we would need essentially $11 million of borrowing to be able to cover the expansion of the 12 Mile Creek plant, all of the R&R projects that were shown for the 10-year time frame, as well as construction and design projects. I do want to make a clarification here. These are estimates. When we give you estimates of project costs, especially for a 10-year time frame, we really don't know what those costs are going to be until they come in. But based on the best available information we have today, we believe that this rate model could work in scenario 1A, and I'll show you that in just a minute. Then 1B is all the same projects as shown in 1A. However, you would do a different way of financing it. On 2, all the same projects that are shown in 1A, but you would add the Crooked Creek interceptor, which is estimated at $16 million. And then item number 3 would be everything in 1A, as well as Crooked Creek interceptor and the short line extension. So again, those are 3 options for you to look at and give us some direction on. So let's talk about 1A. This may not be the easiest for you to see, but I want to kind of talk about what you're seeing here. So those items that are shown in yellow, those are items that we are required to meet as part of our bond requirements. Some of those are additional bonds tests, some of those are rate covenant requirements, some of them are senior lien covenants.
But we're required to meet certain tests for those. If it's in yellow, it means we meet it, but we're marginal. If it's in red, it means we're not meeting it at all. And if it's blue, that means it's fine. What you'll see here is if the board were to consider doing a 1.5% rate increase, now that shows through 2033, but if you were to consider doing a rate increase through that time period, we can meet our bond covenants, our additional bonds tests, and our senior lien covenants. We can meet all of those, and it doesn't create a problem with our bond indentures. And that would allow you to be able to fund all of those R&R projects as we estimate, your projects that are currently in construction, and some of those projects that are in design that we would recommend that you would continue, as well as an expansion of the 12 Mile Creek wastewater treatment plant. Now, I'm going to talk about my recommendation later, but I just want you to see that. This is going to be consistent. 1B is going to be consistent, 2 will be consistent, 3 will be consistent. So 1B, this is just a different way to fund the 12 Mile Creek expansion without adding any of the other items. If you did a one-time rate increase of 5% in 2024 with a 0% rate increase in 25, 26, and 27, you could then fund this project and all the other projects mentioned before. However, you would have to consider marginal rate increases in years 28 through 2033 in order to make sure that we meet all of those bond covenants and those requirements in our bond indentures. So that's just a different way for you to look at that. You know, it can either be 1.5% across the time frame, 5% up front, and then you've got some years of 0%. Scenario number 2, this is where you add the 12 Mile Creek plant to that. So you have the Crooked Creek Interceptor. So you have the 12 Mile Creek expansion as well as the Crooked Creek Interceptor. That's an additional $16 million of estimated cost. Current model shows that if you had a 1.75% increase over the time frame of the CIP, you could maintain your coverages, your bond test, your rate covenants, and you would be fine financially as far as those projects go. You could meet that with a 1.75% increase. Scenario number 3, this is where you add in the short line to all of those other items. You could meet that with a 2% rate increase over that entire time frame. Again, as you can see, we get close on some years, but we do not exceed our requirements to meet those additional bond tests or those rate covenants. We may be in the yellow, but we're always able to maintain that standard. So, again, I'm not suggesting that the board pick, any of these. What I would tell you is that if the board were to consider a potential rate increase in order to fund expansion projects, it would be my recommendation that you consider a 3-year rate adjustment, whatever that is. If that's the 1.5%, you do that for 24, 25, and 26. If it was 2%, 24, 25, 26. And then we come back in 27 and we evaluate where we are. Because obviously, we don't know what those costs are going to be till we have the bids. And we don't know that you will need a 2% rate increase in 28 or 29. It may be less. It may be more based on funding, and based on the cost of those projects. But if you were to consider a rate increase, we would suggest that at least a 3-year time frame, and then we reevaluate that in the 4th year, which would be 2027, for you to then see, well, are we meeting our targets? Do we have enough revenue? Are there projects that we might want to consider doing differently? So that would be my suggestion for moving forward. This is just kind of showing you, again, what do you get by each one of the scenarios that's in there. There is some borrowing that we will have to do, and that's part of the challenge here. A fully cash-funded program is not sustainable. We cannot sustain all of our R&R. We can't sustain our current construction, nor some of those projects that are in design on a fully cash-funded basis.
We can, however, meet some of those with some slight increases. Or however, if the board says we are not willing to do any expansion projects, we would then still recommend that you put your depreciation reserve as part of your cash fund to keep that rate adjustment as low as possible, but there would be no expansion. I want to make that very clear. We would not have the funds to be able to do expansion projects if that would be your decision, which is certainly fine. The board can make that decision. But we would say that if you're not interested in a potential rate increase, that we would not have any expansion projects.
So Brian, does that mean we would not have the 12 Mile Creek expansion?
That is correct, yes,
Okay.
sir.
And we would not have the...
We would not have the Crooked Creek Interceptor, and you would not have, as I've shown up here, the short line extension program. We do not have the revenue to support the 22, 23, or beyond, because those are expansions. Understand, those are wants, they're not needs. They're not R&R projects. They're not projects that are already in construction. Those are projects that you would have to expand your system to be able to complete. And so if you choose to do no rate increase, which that's fine, we would put those depreciation dollars into your program. We'd fund it as much as we could, but you would have to suspend any expansion projects without a rate increase. However, if you want an expansion, you can do it with a small rate increase.
When we, now, some of this expansion money is coming from ARPA funding.
That's correct,
So
yes,
how
sir.
much for the 12 Mile Creek and ARPA funding are we counting on?
16 million is what we would put towards that.
Okay, so if we don't expand 12 Mile Creek, we lose that 16 million.
You would have to repurpose that 16 million to something that we could meet it with, and to be perfectly honest, I don't know that there's a project that we could meet that with that's not an expansion project.
Yeah.
So that's
in the time frame.
In time frame, yes, sir.
So there's a couple different things going on, like, for example, potential money coming from the state this year.
Yes, sir.
So if we increase these rates, could it be after the budget, or it has to be during the budget?
So they would take effect July 1. That would obviously be our recommendation, that your rate changes would take effect as part of the budget. And then hopefully we'll have some idea what the state will or will not do. Keep in mind that we cannot appropriate, we cannot, what is that called? Beverly? Say it again. We cannot pre-audit a contract for money that we don't have, or it's not appropriated to us. So if the state has not actually made an appropriation to us, we can't count that as an appropriation. Therefore, we cannot pre-audit a construction contract to be able to move forward. So we need to really know we have those dollars to bake those into it. I anticipated you would have that question, and what I would suggest that you consider is that if the board were to approve a rate increase, that you consider that the funds that we get from the state, that we would really purpose those for the short line water extension program. While we can put that for the 12 Mile Creek expansion, those state dollars are a little more flexible than the ARPA dollars. They're not flexible. We really have to meet certain federal requirements to procure and construct, whereas the state dollars are a little more pliable for us to be able to use.
Are you using any system development fees from
Yes, sir.
the Yadkin Rocky River Subbasin?
So there are system development fees in the Yadkin Rocky River. I do not know off the top of my head how much they are. We're using $8 million. If the board were to move forward with 12 Mile Creek, we would use $8 million of system development fees collected in 12 Mile for the 12 Mile Creek expansion.
But you don't know how much we have in the Rocky River?
Off the top of my head, sir, I do not. We can find that out for you, but I just don't know off the top
I
of my
would
head.
like to know that, because it's our policy keeping us from using the funds from one basin to the other, but basically the 12 Mile Creek plant serves both basins right now.
It does, well, it does. Because the Poplin, you have the Poplin area, which is certainly pumped over the ridge. That is correct, yes, sir.
By approximately the amount that the expansion is going to provide.
Yes, sir.
Well, more.
Yes, sir. A little bit more,
Yeah,
actually.
more.
Yeah, a little bit
1.9
more.
versus versus 1.5 million.
It's about
gallons per
1.8 or so, yes, sir, 1.9.
The other concern I have is, we've received the funds back yet for the purchase of the land at
We have
Site
not
B?
received those. I did, however, get a request for some additional information on the project for the purchase of the property, as well as for the $35 million on the Yadkin 762 line. So we're hopeful that that's moving forward. We don't have it in hand, but we are hopeful.
Then I guess some more concerns would be that, we can't appropriate money that we don't have. And basically, we're appropriating money that we don't have. If they will give us the money or won't give us the money is the question. And without a faster answer than, we've been waiting on this. We've spent this money last year. Where's the refund?
Well, I think the key here is the state is just slow, period. That would be, honestly, they just move at a snail's pace to start with. We didn't anticipate they were going to move quickly. However, we don't have the dollars in hand, and we're simply waiting for those dollars to reimburse us for the costs that we have already incurred on those projects.
Well, another thing is that we keep relying on the Union County Ratepayer Savings and Loan.
Sure.
And raising their rates to pay.
I understand.
And yet we're no further toward answers with this state money than, again, imagine the debt and imagine the rate increase we're going to be in if we go on a wing and a prayer that they'll give us our money back. And right now, they're batting zero. Don't have any money in hand.
I can't fault you for having that concern. I can't.
And it's not your fault.
Right.
We've done everything we're supposed to do.
I want to add something there. I do want to, clarify. I do think there's a difference between the $8 million allocation and the $35 million allocation. When they made that $8 million allocation, what we told them we were doing at the time has changed somewhat.
True.
So we've had to clarify that. Now, the $35 million has been pretty consistent all along, and those are appropriations made by the state, which is what allows us to book that as appropriated funds. So it's not any future money. The state did take action for those to be appropriated to Union County.
So we have that money in hand.
Well, it's not in
It
hand.
doesn't have to be in hand, but we are expecting it because of the action that they took. But I want to clarify again on that $8 million, we did have to change what that project was from the beginning. So they've had to ask additional questions to ensure, again, remember, those are ARPA dollars, so it's got the ARPA layer and it's got the state rules and regulations, which is frankly another incredibly complex layer to go through. So we're working through that entire process.
For some reason, I get the feeling we're in Vegas. Brian, you were in Vegas last week, man.
I was.
Did you go lay out on anything on roulette to see if you got your money back or not?
I did not.
Yeah, I don't like doing that either. It seems like we're taking a chance. Another thing, the state money, again, that you said we haven't got appropriated, that's one other potential here. And I'm not saying that, I'd ever be against a rate increase, because we have inflation just like everybody else. And I don't think the people would mind 1%, 2% maybe rate increase if it's to replace and repair and fix. The expansion of it is where the concern is, that expansion.
Sure.
And so what we've talked about is that GO bond for expansion projects. So would it be better to go to the people and hit for the fence and say, do you want to do this, this, and this? And here's a $20 million, $30 million, $40 million bond that we would like for you guys to vote on, and the citizens of Union County. We've got the water situation where, I'd like to see us develop a water team of employees to go out and put water lines in the ground. I think a lot of counties probably have people that put water lines in and complete some of these stretches of highway that we don't have water, that we start on one end and we don't end at the other end. We have a gap between, and get these main roads in the county serviced with water so that we can get back to a self-help program that's accessible to more people, that they can do stuff on the side, like the side roads and have the main roads, covered. especially with the issue with the well testing and all that we're looking at. Anson County, this board, we need to have a discussion with Anson County. They've expressed interest in serving inside Union County, and I think maybe you may have had some conversations with their manager, and I definitely would love for this board to have some conversations with Anson County about, their willingness to serve inside Union County to reach those areas that are far away from a water plant and don't look like they're getting any closer, to be able to service those, to be able to, give your daughter or son an acre of land that you don't have to put a $20,000 well filter on. So that's one of the issues, the possibility of, again, going to a GO bond of some sort. And then all these things in combination can answer some of these questions. And I know you're not here to do that tonight, but tonight you're telling me that if we did the 12 Mile Creek, if we did the Wingate water line,
Yes, sir.
and if we did the R&R projects.
And which one are you talking about? The 1A or which one or scenario are you talking about?
I'm just looking at the
So
R&R.
if you did the expansion of 12 Mile Creek without the other Crooked Creek interceptor, that's a separate expansion project.
Yeah,
If you
leave
just
that
did-
off for now,
If
to
you
see if-
just
to see
did
if
the
we get
12
money
Mile
back.
Creek expansion, as well as the, again, the 762, that's the line from the plant to Wingate, that's already in design. And finishing the ones that are in construction, as well as the R&R program, we would need a 1.5% rate increase in order to fund that.
So you're looking at proposing that when?
I'm actually proposing that the board give us that direction now. Of course, that comes back to you for your budget adoption, but we would need to inform our company doing our system development fee study that is a project that needs to be included. We'd need to draft all of the stuff to get you to the point where you're ready to take that action, but that's what we would move towards.
And that 1.5 includes what?
As far as projects go, let's see. So that's everything that is in construction, what's listed here. Okay, and so you have this, so that's all projects that are in construction. It would include those in design to finish design. Obviously, we've already spent money, so we would finish those in design. There's 2 of those. All of the R&R projects that are then shown here. And understand some of these R&R projects are in out years. So we estimate what those costs are, but they will likely have some change in what those costs are over time. We would halt these particular projects. They would stop. Okay? Those will all be halted. And then there are some projects that are in design. I'm sorry, it doesn't show on here, but there are some projects in design that we would actually move forward with construction. We would recommend, and those are again, those are part of the requirement. It doesn't show on here, I'm sorry, but we would have some projects in design we'd recommend you finish. They're the ones with the asterisks. The ones with the asterisks are the ones we recommend that you actually finish the design on those ones that are shown with the asterisks. And I believe there's 3, if I can see them there. There's 3 that are, no, 4. There's 4 that are shown there that you would finish from design all the way through construction. Everything else would just be design and it would stop. We put design on shelf. So that's the list of what would be done through our entire CIP program. And this is, again, we've shown you a 10-year window. This is usually we adopt our CIPs on a 5-year time frame. That's typically what we do, but we showed you a 10-year window so you could see the full 10-year. And again, understanding if the board is not supportive of a rate increase, and I get it, I understand that, then the expansion's off the table, folks. We just don't have the revenue source to do expansion projects without a rate increase. And we would also exclude the short line water program. Again, that is an expansion. We do not have dollars in the bank to cover that.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Going back to slide 11.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So if my memory is correct, please help me with, 2 weeks ago at our last meeting, you made a recommendation to the board. And I believe it said, A, you recommended the 12-mile expansion, which is what we see.
Yes, ma'am.
In this column.
Yes, ma'am.
I believe B was R&R,
Yes, ma'am.
and C was the Crooked Creek Interceptor.
So I would think what I recommended is for an expansion project.
Uh-huh.
The 12-Mile Creek would be my very first recommendation if you're considering expansion. Regardless of whether you do any expansion, R&R should be in that list. That is maintaining your system. That is really, honestly, that's number one. You should always maintain your system. If you want to expand your system, my recommendation would be the 12-Mile Creek plant. If you want to further expand your system, I would also add in the Crooked Creek Interceptor. That is your best opportunity to serve the Highway 74 commercial corridor. Again, that would be my recommendation if you're considering expansion. 12-Mile Creek first, Crooked Creek Interceptor second. Always R&R should be at the top of the list. And then, of course, you should finish construction of anything that we've already started in construction, because it's really not going to be any less expensive for us to try and halt it. We have a contract already in place for that. Did that answer your question?
Not quite.
Okay, all right. Go ahead.
I wanted to make sure, because I remember we approved 2 of the 3 recommendations you made.
What the board gave me direction to do is come back to you and show you what the rate increase would be if we were to add those.
So I just wanted to verify if that 4th column, the Crooked Creek Interceptor, is that the one that you recommended last time, but we didn't move forward on?
What I wanted to do, yes, ma'am, is show you what the impact would be if you added that.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So the only way to achieve your recommendations from last time would be scenario 2 at minimum.
So to achieve only the 12-Mile Creek expansion, only the 12-Mile Creek expansion is 1A or 1B. If you wish to add the Crooked Creek, which I said that was sort of number 2 on the list, then that would have to be number 2.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
The last question I had from this presentation is, if there's a 1.5% rate increase, or, the B with a gap, who's receiving that rate increase?
That would be all customers, water and sewer.
And commercial and agriculture?
Yes, ma'am. All customers.
It'd be all customers?
All customers, yes, ma'am.
Because I think, the problem we had last time was that each customer type was getting a different,
Yes, ma'am.
increase or decrease.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so that was my last question, just confirming who would be getting the increase, and you're saying everyone?
Everyone. And understand, we do have different rate charges for classifications, but it would be a 1.5, or what, if you are a commercial customer, it's 1.5 on top of your
Based on
commercial
their
rate.
rate.
If you're a residential customer, it's 1.5 on what your rate is.
Okay.
But it's water and sewer. I don't want anyone to misunderstand that. It's water customers and sewer customers. Because there are some people who are just.
Everyone's getting, as opposed to one subgroup or 14,000 people getting a 22% rate
Yes, ma'am.
increase. Okay, so everyone's
Everyone.
getting the same increase?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Brian, David, either one of you have any questions right now? I do. Oh, you go ahead, Brian. I'm David.
So Brian, let me make sure that I understand you correctly. So what you're recommending for us to consider tonight, your recommendation,
Yes, sir.
your personal recommendation is that we look at a minimal rate increase for a period of no less than 3 years.
Yes, sir.
And then at that point, we reassess.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
And so what I'm seeing is we're going to have potentially a 1.5, somewhere to.
Pull that up so you can see it. There you go.
Yeah, thank you. So that would just compound annually, correct?
It does, yes, sir.
Okay.
Which is why I recommend that we reevaluate that after the 3rd year, just to make sure that, well, is that the appropriate rate? It may be, actually, it may be able to come down. Maybe some of these dollars that we're anticipating we're going to get, they're in. We now see how that's working. maybe the estimates that we had, maybe they were high, maybe they were low, we don't know. So that would be my recommendation.
Sure. And as, so when we returned our rate schedule to the previous, when we rolled it back, thank you.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
When we rolled that back to our previous rate schedule, at that point in time, we were considering, what, a 7% annual increase?
Yes, sir.
Over a period of?
5 years.
5 years.
Yes, sir.
Correct. Okay. Thank you, sir. I appreciate
sir.
the clarification.
Absolutely.
David Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to kind of address the big picture, with any of these scenarios, whether it's 1.5% a year, 1.75, do any of these adequately fund all of our projects in design?
They do not. They
Okay.
do not adequately fund all project and
Okay.
design. It would only be a portion of those projects and
Okay.
design.
And projects that are in planning or haven't been started, to what extent does this increase address those projects, none of which have anything to do with adding capacity?
So anything that is potentially planned for expansion is halted, and there are no dollars for that. Only expansion projects that the board authorizes would move forward, which if you were to say yes, right now, that would be 12 Mile Creek. And then in the other scenarios, you add either Crooked Creek or the short line programs.
Okay. And at the last meeting and then the prior meeting, we had some great information presented to us about the R&R projects, the wastewater projects, the water, the facilities projects, and it was very evident that the single largest funding source for these projects was not cash being spun off by the utility. It wasn't ARPA. It wasn't system development fees. It was future bond issuance.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And you've made the point, I believe tonight, that there are a number of projects, not just the ones we're kind of looking at in the first, this fiscal year and the next, but projects thereafter that just can't be funded any way than with bond issuances. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay, and we've got projects in renewal and replacement in water and wastewater that are going to require future bond issuance.
That's a very good likelihood, yes, sir.
Okay, and just to kind of refer back to the last meeting when I mentioned the Fitch report, the Fitch rating agency report that was recently published on Union County, their conclusion was that they didn't anticipate any future bond issuance for Union County. Now, that's not because we don't have a need for future bond issuance, clearly. It's because our rate structure just doesn't support bond issuance. Is that fair?
The current rate structure, that's
Okay.
correct. Yes, sir.
Do you think a 1.5% or a 1.75% or a 2% rate structure of these limited number of years is going to be able to adequately support bond issuance, future bond issuance for these non-capacity expanding projects?
So according to Stantec, the projects that we've listed, which are those in construction, those which we would finish from design to construction.
Some of those in design,
That's right. So some of those are correct. Some of
There are
those
many in design here that we just wouldn't be able to address.
That is correct.
Okay.
As well as the expansion for 12 Mile Creek, we could continue to meet all of our coverages and fund those projects with debt issuance. We could not do all the other projects listed in the CIP without additional debt issuance, and the rate structure would not support that unless the board made another change.
And the list of projects that you have here that are halted, which are considerable, I mean, that's a big list. Is it fair to say that there are reasonable concerns about the management and the health and the efficiency of the overall system if some of these projects aren't seen through to completion?
I mean, obviously, when we look at our system, we have a master plan, and the board will see, a master plan that we'll bring to you sometime in the near future. But that master plan shows what we believe is necessary for the system to operate in the future. Now, if the board changes its philosophy on how you wish to expand or grow the system, that changes the master plan by default. The previous master plan was based on some expansion assumptions that we would make. So the truth is that we cannot maintain an expansion consumption or an expansion assumption without some significant changes to our rate structure. If we make a change to what the board wants to accomplish, then we'll have to rework how our cash flow works. It will not be easy. I'm not going to say it's easy, because there's not enough dollars for us to really look at the long term. We're trying to focus on what can we accomplish today, and then see what does that get us for the future. And there's things that we don't know. I mean, I'm going to tell you, we don't know what the lead and copper rules are going to have us have to. We don't know what those costs are going to be. We don't know what PFAS costs are going to be. We'll have to evaluate that once we get that information from the feds. So there's nothing baked into this to accommodate those potential requirements, because we just don't know what they are at this point. So to answer your question, what this is, honestly, is a short-term approach so that we can get a long-term decision from what the board wants to do with the utility. It is a short-term approach.
Is a short-term, when you're looking at a public utility, and a public utility has, I think we can all agree, long timelines. I mean, when you look at conception of a project and design of a project and engineering and construction and finally putting it into operation, depending on that project, those timelines, we can all agree, are long. Does it make sense for this board, well, you don't have to answer this question. This is a rhetorical question.
Okay.
But does it really make sense for us to engage in this kind of short-term policy making and stumbling and straining from current fiscal year to next fiscal year to try to see how we can gather up enough resources, funding sources, to be able to complete key projects and just kind of ignore the outer years at our peril? I think that's a terrible way to manage our system. And I'm really, that's a great disappointment to me. But last question, and this might be for you, or perhaps Beverly for you. This one-time action that the board seems prepared to take with, for lack of a better term, the depreciation reserves.
Yes, sir.
That have accumulated. Doing that kind of as a one-off, a one-time event, will that have consequences to our ability to issue future revenue bonds? Might it have consequences to our rating and to interest rates that we might obtain in the capital markets?
Certainly. So I don't believe it'll have a consequence that we cannot use the debt, honestly. However, it will impact our cash on hand. We are using cash. Cash on hand is what the rating agencies use, that is one of the components that they look at when they're trying to give you a rating. And so if our cash on hand is significantly impacted, they may very well look at that as a negative. We won't know until they make that decision and they reevaluate us. But it is certainly possible that we could have a change in our rating if our cash on hand and our policies are amended. I will tell you that the rating agencies look at very, very favorably that we have a 365-day policy. That is very favorable. The additional cash, they don't count that as depreciation. They just count that as cash on hand. So if you decide you wish to use that, that's fine. I do think it will have some impact on our cash on hand. Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you, Brian.
Yep.
Brian, with all that said, why would we have even considered an approximate $300 million in new borrowing for a new sewer plant?
I'm sorry, I don't.
Why would we have even considered, with the last board or previous boards, borrowing approximately $300 million more for a new sewer plant? I mean, we've heard all the dire straits about what we're not doing, but usually when people who have a house and they're maintaining it and they start having any kind of financial issues about paying for that house, they don't rush out and buy another house. They don't rush out and buy another car.
Sure.
They don't make those decisions, but yet prior boards have pushed that one issue to the detriment of these others. And we've saved up that cash reserve, is my understanding, to help justify paying for that approximate $300 million new sewer plant. So again, I go back to the point that I'm concerned not about necessarily 12 Mile Creek as much as I'm concerned about getting paid back for it. Those ARPA dollars that we have accounted for, you've accounted for 12 Mile Creek, how much is that total?
16 million.
16 million?
Yes, sir.
Do we have to spend it on 12 Mile Creek? Is it allocated only for 12 Mile Creek?
No, sir. Right now, the way that is structured is those are dollars that we can use if we choose to for anything that the ARPA allows us to use it for. It doesn't have to be water and sewer. It can be something other than water and sewer.
Yep.
The challenge we have is if the board says, I want you to use those ARPA dollars for water and sewer, we have to be able to appropriate it, spend it by December of 2026. Is that correct?
So if we took the 12 Mile Creek off, we could spend that on the Crooked Creek Interceptor and pay for it.
As long as we can complete that by 2026, yes, sir.
And you believe we could do that?
I do believe we could do that, yes, sir.
And then we come back next year and decide if we're going to put a timeline on the 12 Mile Creek sewer plant.
Again, those are all decision points that the board would have to make.
And I think honestly, with all of our options and not knowing whether or not we're going to get the money back, that we're spending a lot of money that we believe we're going to get back. And I'd say maybe we're 90% sure we're going to get it back. I looked at you.
I want to be, you look, I'm going to get this microphone a few more times. So any dollar that the state has allocated to you is always only going to come back in a reimbursable fashion.
Right.
They're never going to write us a check. That's not how they, that's not how they operate.
Right.
So, I mean, this is really no more unique than anything else, except for, and that's on us. We changed the project at Site B so that we had to go back and give them additional information.
What did we change?
Well, the original direction from the board is that was going to be a wastewater treatment site, and that's what we.
And one day it may be when we save up $300 million.
I understand that, but it's not exactly the same project. I mean, we can't, and we have told them that it may be, yes, but and that makes them ask us more questions. It's not as direct a path as it was with the original intent of those dollars.
Right.
16 million is our county, those are county ARPA dollars.
So we have that in hand.
Right.
I think the other question, and you raised this concern, is the 35 million that was a state appropriation, which was for the 762 zone. And I think you had some concerns about would we get those funds? And as Michelle mentioned earlier, that project's been pretty consistent throughout the time frame. When we've submitted that to the state, it's been consistent what we intended on using those funds for. We did have to say, well, the cost estimates have gone up, so therefore there was something that we couldn't do, but we've been consistent on what that was for. Again, I am optimistic, and I believe that we will get the $35 million for that project.
We've asked for a lot of money back, but we're looking at funds that, again, that we're not sure we're going to get back. And the 12 Mile Creek's $47 million.
Yes, sir.
Versus this Interceptor project being
roughly 16
million, which we've got in ARPA funds.
Roughly.
And we've got another 35 million.
For the Wingate line.
For the Wingate line, and those have to be done before 2026.
Yes, sir.
Now, what we're curious about is, will the state allow us, will the General Assembly allow us to put some kind of commercial priority on new sewer capacity? We've got no answer for that. We won't have an answer until July?
Yeah, I would say we
Okay.
would have to watch and see if they introduce any bills on that.
We've asked for some future funding, or for some
That's
water and
correct.
sewer funding.
That's correct.
We've asked for that from this General Assembly. We don't know until July. And yet, we're talking about raising rates in June, or to take effect in July.
Yes, sir.
And we have no closer answers to system development fees, what they're going to be, more or less, if we're going to get money back, if we're not going to get money back, then where do we come up with the money? You can come up with $4 million pretty quick. but I don't think we can come up with a lot more without raising rates. We've got a policy being developed to let the voters decide if we want to expand 12 Mile Creek. They could do a $50 million bond. They could vote yes or no on that and decide whether they're ready to expand or not. I know there's a lot of developers down there waiting on it, but everybody's kind of waiting right now. We're waiting. They're waiting. A lot of waiting. And
Yes, sir.
until July, we won't know much of what's going on. So, I would, the time sensitivity of this, if we made a decision at the next meeting, but consider instead of doing any 12 Mile Creek expansion of $47 million, that we look at just doing the interceptor project that we can complete, and then consider at the next meeting if we want to wait and do a GO bond on the expansion of 12 Mile Creek, which would be approximately $50 million that the voters could decide if they want to spend that money or not. If they're willing to raise the rates by a penny or 1.5% or, again, I don't mind raising it if we're fixing pipes with it.
Sure.
But if we're expanding, that's what we've said, if we're going to expand and build more houses, then we need to look at letting the voters decide that or not.
Certainly. Now, I do want to point out, as long as everybody understands this, it's your CIP. We have to tell our company that does our system development fee, we have to give them something, because you will have to adopt a new system development fee ordinance before June.
Yeah.
Or in the June timeframe. We have to give them, these are the projects that go in that. So that's the reason we need at least some, hey, we want this in there, we want 12 Mile, we don't want 12 Mile, we want Crooked Creek, because you can't go back and add that once you've done it. You can do another study a year later, but you can't add it to that study. It is what it is, it's finite. So we'll need to at least know that. Actually, it would be great to know that today, because obviously it takes time for them to put that study together. And if the board's decision is it's R&R, and it's R&R only, and the projects that are in construction, that's fine. We just need to tell them that so they can build that into that system development fee ordinance. I also want to make it clear that what we showed you for the R&R and all our construction projects showed that we had a deficit. We would not be able to fund our R&R projects for the entire timeline. We will have to consider a rate increase if R&R is all you're going to do. Now, you don't have to do it this year, and you may not have to do it next year, but you will have to consider a rate increase in order to fund our R&R projects for the entire program. So I just want to make sure that was clear.
I agree, and as far as if you were telling me, hey, we're recommending a 1% rate increase to cover replacement repair, or,
Sure.
But that's what the Crooked Creek Interceptor is. It's a replacement and a renewal, as well as an expansion. You're upsizing those
Sure.
pipes that are full and they can't take any more.
Yes, sir. It allows you to serve an area that you can't serve now.
So I think if we put 12 Mile Creek on hold till we get some money and answers back, because there's a time issue. You can spend $47 million and hope you get it done on time, or you can spend $16 million and know that you'll get it on time and get those projects that are a lot of commercial projects going.
Mm-hmm.
And then once we see money flowing back into our coffers from the federal or state or whoever is giving us the money, then we look at what we're going to do. And if all else fails, we put a GO bond on for the 12 Mile Creek expansion. And we might go to 12 million gallons a day, we might go to whatever. So we can decide that at a later time, and we're still going to have 5,300 houses built in the meantime in the 12 Mile Creek Basin.
Yes, sir, there are already homes that are approved, you're correct.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
So, Brian?
Yeah, so I just want to, I guess, maybe point of clarification.
Yes, sir.
So, Brian, the way that I look at this is, we have to identify our needs versus our wants.
Yep.
So, at this point, I'm looking at this, and from what you're saying, my interpretation is that the Crooked Creek Interceptor is a need.
It would be my opinion, it is definitely a need, yes, sir.
And that these others that are listed on like slide 11, so 12 Mile and potentially other projects would be
wants,
more of a want.
Yes, sir.
I think it's unreasonable to suggest that we can never raise water rates again.
Certainly. And I never would expect that you would do that. I mean, you know that.
Yeah, the point, I think that the whole point of the rollback to the previous rates was that the majority of this board felt like they were unnecessary. And so what we're trying to find is the best way to approach supplying for our needs and then potentially for some wants.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. I interpreted that the board felt that the previous capital plan was very aggressive, and that was why you took the action you took. What we need from the board is, what is your direction? What projects do you want for us to accomplish? Again, our goal is to give you what you ask for and what you want. We're here as just a resource.
And if, it's been said that a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. So if we have the 16 million in hand, and that is a project that we can accomplish.
Yes, sir.
Then perhaps that would be the direction that we should look at.
And I appreciate that, and I'm glad that we had the acquisition discussion, because I do want to point out that project will likely require condemnation. I want the board to understand that, because we are reaching a point. We started going through the acquisition process for easements already on that project. It was halted because the board actually decided that they were concerned about moving forward with that project with condemnation and not knowing that they actually wanted to fund that project, as well as the rate rollback made it where we couldn't fund that project. So if we were to move forward with that, which I certainly support, understand it is likely going to require the board to understand that condemnation is a very likely requirement for some of those properties.
Do we have any kind of idea about the scale of properties that we would be talking about with this?
We do. I don't have it in front of me, but yes, sir. That project is well underway, actually.
Amazingly enough, I have those numbers. That project has 42 total easements, of which we've acquired 15. So there's 27 outstanding that would be referred to legal counsel and would be included in the condemnation request.
And as John indicated before, it is always our goal to settle. Sometimes condemnation is a way to get to a settlement. It doesn't always have to go to court, but we have to be able to have the power and the authority given to us by the board to take that option. Because oftentimes property owners don't think we're serious until we show up with that letter that says, guys, we're seriously considering condemnation on that property. Then they come to the table and we can settle. There are those property owners, there's no amount of money we can offer them other than a crazy number that they're going to be willing to take. And unfortunately, we will have to go to court for some of those. I couldn't tell, is it 1 or is it 10? It's really going to depend. But we will likely have to have some condemnation on this project.
I had a developer tell me just the other day that, hey, look, we're willing to pay higher system development fees. He said he was.
Yes, sir.
And I'm sure there are others out there that would rather do that than not do business. So again, we're waiting on a lot of people to line up. And if I got $16 million and I got a $16 million project, let's get it done. If we need to increase rates for the current customers to repair their system, not to expand the system so that new people can move here at a reduced rate, then again, I'd be willing to consider that at budget time.
Certainly.
And we'll know a lot more at budget time as far as appropriations, things of that nature.
We should.
Potential appropriations. So do you need something tonight, or do you want to wait till the next meeting?
No, so if the board were to at least, I believe what I hear, and then that's why I want the board to take action on this, is to say, I hear Crooked Creek, so I hear Brian, we would recommend that R&R projects be included in our system development fee study. Our projects currently under construction, which we have contracts for, included in that study, and Crooked Creek Interceptor be added into that study. We would not include the 12 Mile Creek plant in the study, would not include any of the water plant expansions, no other expansions, and we would, I want to make sure we're clear, we would also not include the 22 and 23 short line extension program in that system development fee study.
Right.
That's what I would like to hear so that I can give that to our consultants and we can move forward with that study.
Yeah. So I would make that motion that we do the Crooked Creek interceptor.
Use ARPA dollars for that.
And use the ARPA money for that.
Yes, sir.
Because it matches. Use the, of course, the ARPA dollars for the Wingate water line.
Yes, sir.
And then revisit, do the rates for renewal and replacement in June during the budget.
Okay.
And see how much money we're getting from the state and start applying that possibly to a 12 Mile Creek expansion then. If we see if we're getting money back, which we don't know whether or not we're getting it back yet or not. So when we start seeing money come back into our coffers and then make a decision, that will leave the money alone in our reserves, correct?
No, sir. We would still need to use our depreciation reserves.
So when you're taking out a $47 million project, how does that not help?
Well, remember that you couldn't meet your full R&R program as our current cash level is. With our current rates, when that last meeting I showed you, you could not meet your R&R program without using your depreciation dollars for that. So you would still need to use that $20 million for depreciation on that. That just helps you balance your budget, so to speak.
But then as we look at rate increases for R&R,
basically that gives us a little bit of breathing room, but we may, once we know more, you may have to still consider a rate increase for R&R at some point in the future. Not necessarily this year or next year. I'm not telling you for sure, but at some point in the future, you will likely have to consider a rate increase for R&R. Yes, sir.
And then we do a GO bond for the expansion of sewer projects.
If that's the direction of the board, that's what we would do.
If we feel we need to do that, and we can move on from there. So is everybody clear on what I'm saying with this? We visit the rate increases in the budget in June. We use the $16 million from ARPA to go ahead and get the project done at Crooked Creek Interceptor. And we continue with the Wingate water line that's provided by ARPA funds, $35 million, is that right?
It's $35 million, yes, sir.
And then by then, maybe we'll know more about if we're going to be getting money back from all these promises that we've been made. And we can move on from there next year and the following year on the other projects.
I mean, at 12 Mile.
At 12 Mile, yeah. It might put 12 Mile a year behind, but it's only got 5,300 houses that can be built on.
I think the key here is if we're not trying to funnel ARPA dollars into that,
Yes.
again, it gives you a little bit of breathing room. Now, I can't tell you how long the capacity at 12 Mile Creek will last. I don't know the answer to that.
Breathing room is what I think we should be looking for here, because we've implemented a lot of policies in the last 3 months, and we've sent a lot of requests to the state for commercial over residential preference, for extra money. We've asked for funding. We've asked for other things, and we don't know yet if they're going to be approved, and we don't know yet if we're going to receive these ARPA dollars in refunds from the federal or state government. So we could be coming back with a significant increase just to cover what we're making decisions on here tonight, if they don't come back with the money.
If we don't get those funds, it very well could have an impact, yes, sir, on your rates, absolutely.
A lot of unknowns.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any discussion on that motion? No discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
1, 2, 1.
All right.
All right.
That's all I have. That's all I have on that one. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. So, and all that, I've lost my place maybe. We're on the last item, or was the last item? Okay, last we have the Planning Board of Adjustments, potential merger of those, consolidation of those two boards. Reason that I asked for this item to be added to the agenda is that, a lot of our municipalities are concerned about donut holes, areas around their towns that they would like to determine how they're developed. And it's been a point of contention with the county and some of these municipalities over time. I heard the term ETJ again mentioned the other night, which if these landowners and the developers understood that it might be beneficial for them to annex into these municipalities, to let the municipality give them the services and the zoning that they want. The desire is that the Union County Planning Board become less busy, not more busy. And our Board of Adjustments is already infrequently meeting, correct, Manager?
That's correct.
So with that, we'd like to start the process to determine if the public's interested in those two boards merging. So the motion is to direct staff to begin preparing a text amendment that consolidates the Planning Board and the Board of Adjustments into one board with both functions. Any discussion on the motion?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Commissioner.
Thank
Davis.
you. I am against this concept of combining boards. I think it would be a mistake. It's rarely done, very infrequently done among the larger and mid-sized counties in the state. We're among the top 10 counties in the state of North Carolina, and there's not a single one that has a combined board, and I think for good reason. If you look at the top 30 counties, there's only one county that does it this way. And I think, the reasons for that are as follows. One, there are two very different boards that operate very differently. The Board of Adjustment is basically a judicial, what's called a quasi-judicial board. So they take evidence, they make quasi-judicial decisions, they swear in witnesses, they have a record, and their decisions can get appealed to county superior courts. And that's very different from what the Planning Board does, which is largely advisory, advising on rezonings, advising on ordinance changes, comprehensive planning, that sort of thing. And I don't think it's a good idea to combine those two functionalities. I mean, do we really want a essentially judicial entity, a judicial board, also making recommendations on ordinance changes or rezonings? I mean, that tends to, I think, confuse what should be clear. Also, I think there's a principle of separation of powers that is a very good principle at our federal level and our state level and even the level of local government. We've got, we're not, in short supply of volunteers who are willing to step up and do these important jobs. So why don't we just keep what is not broken and maintain separate boards? That's my 2 cents on it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other discussion on that?
I'll just say this, that generally, I favor more of an approach of limited government. And, I was watching one of the planning board meetings, this is back months ago, and they were talking about how it came up with 9 members. And it goes back to historically, there were certain districts, if memory serves me correct, and those are no longer even used for.
Would that be the townships?
Perhaps, yeah. My memory's a little bit foggy on that, but I believe that there was certain districts that were used. Bottom line is that I think that at some point we have to look at making government more efficient and limited, and I think that this would be a step in the right direction, so I'll be in support of the motion.
Melissa, you have anything? And I would say that, I would agree with Commissioner Williams in most counties that are large, but in Union County, we've got 14 municipalities, each with their planning and boards of planning boards and how they want to grow. And a lot of times our planning board just gets caught in the middle of that because of these donut holes that people complain about. And that's why ETJ's put out so much. So the goal would be, again, to get the developers to look at the Union County Planning Board as, if you look at a map of Union County and all the places that are in municipalities, it's very close to half, if not half, of the county is in a municipality. So the people on the eastern side of the county where there's very few municipalities or they're consolidated, along 74. Those folks just don't come up very much for rezonings. We don't have sewer. We don't have the utilities to make a lot of that possible. It's usually for a little small commercial project on a septic tank. So again, the goal would be to get those developers and the landowners to negotiate with the local municipalities to be able to take them in. I think that would make the municipalities happier. I think that would make the utilities happier, that they didn't have to try to expand across the world to make something happen, that they can get this all done within that the confines of that municipality. So I would ask again that my fellow board members support the motion. I think we need to hear from the public, and there'll be input from other places, and this just starts the process. So with that, I'll call for a vote on the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed?
No.
3-1. Okay, now we are at the end, and we don't necessarily need to say interim manager comments anymore. Now it would be the county manager comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I do want to thank the board for the confidence in me to make me the manager. I appreciate that, and I will do my best to be open, transparent, and certainly bring forth the items that you want to see accomplished as far as the county goes. I do want to say something, and I believe most of the staff may be aware of this. Today, Deputy County Manager Michelle Lancaster submitted her notice to me that she intends on retiring at the end of March of this year. She's taking a job here, still in Union County, not in local government, one that's of her passion, and I appreciate that. But I just wanted to say that, it's hard to imagine Union County without Michelle. But we are so grateful for all the time that we've had together. She has had such a positive impact on this management team and the county, and I just want to wish her well. I know she's got until the end of March, but I did want to say that it has been an honor and a privilege to work with you, Michelle. That's all I have.
Commissioner David Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just briefly want to, and I've endeavored to respect Commissioner Richard Helms' privacy, but many have noticed that this is his second meeting that he's missed, and all I'll say is that he's been ill, he's recovering, and I would invite folks just to keep him in prayer and his family in prayer as he recovers from illness. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Brian Helms.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, thank you, Ms. Lancaster, for your service to Union County. We really appreciate what you've done for the county over the years, and certainly wish you well on your next endeavor. I'd like to thank the speakers that showed up tonight. We heard some very touching comments from the folks that signed up for informal comments, and I want to express my gratitude for them to come here tonight and share their stories. I would also like to thank my fellow commissioners for standing in support of the resolution to support House Bill 98. I believe that this is a great step for not only our county but also our state. And thank you to the staff. I'm excited to work with our new county manager, Brian Matthews. Wish him well in his new role, and that's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair Melissa Merrill.
So I spoke to Michelle earlier today, and I told her I was very torn on wishing her congratulations. Sounds like a dream job and a perfect fit for you and your family, but you're going to be very, very missed, and I'm very, very disappointed. I only got four months to work with you, but did have the opportunity over the last 8 years to do some really, really great things together in Union County, specifically around the schools, and I just want to say thank you for your many years of service. And but I'm going to make you keep your promise from what you told me we'd get together. So, and I still need to have time with Nick. So, and I want to say congratulations to Brian Matthews, our new county manager. As I said earlier, we received about 30 really good applications, but none compared to what I know you'll be able to do as our county manager, and we look forward to working with you. Thank you.
All right, and I would also, ask that people keep Commissioner Richard Helms in their prayers for speedy recovery. Michelle, I've got a favorite movie that I watch where they're going to eat a snake, and I'm getting somewhere. And they ask, what part do you think I'm about to eat? And the guy says, or the woman says, I think you're going to eat the knee. And when I think about Union County, you've been the heart. You've been a heart in Union County. You bring feelings back to some of our decisions, and you brought a lot of things home. And I'd like to also congratulate Brian on the manager position, and I know that you'll do a great job. And you've, as I go to different municipalities around the county, as I talk to different people in different industries, Brian has a universal respect for his honesty and for his good dealings with people. And I just want to congratulate you on that. And with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. None opposed.